Hey, you guys, this is Josh with Homesteading Family, and welcome to today's episode of the Pantry Chat, Food for Thought. I have got an exciting guest for you today. We're going to be hanging out with Jason Ross. Jason is the author of a series, Black Autumn series, which is an apocalyptic homesteading book series. We're going to be talking about that today. It's also the storyline for the new movie coming out. If you haven't heard about this, called Homestead. I'm really excited about this. I've gotten to see some of it as a fantastic movie that Angel Studios is producing. So we're going to talk about that movie, what they're doing with it. And that's going to lead into a whole new series and a whole new show as well. So we're going to have fun talking about that, as well as probably permaculture, homesteading in general, and even entrepreneurship. Jason is a seasoned entrepreneur, really interesting guy, and looking forward to bringing him on here in just a minute. But first, I just want to say thank you to our sponsor today. All right, I want to thank Azure Standard for sponsoring today's session. Folks at Azure are convinced that the key to a healthy society begins with healthy people who are committed to healthy foods and a healthy lifestyle. Over the years, we have purchased what we can't raise or grow from Azure Standard, whether that's our own food, our own health products, some of the food for our animals. Our go-to, if we cannot raise it ourselves or find it locally in good quality, has been to go to Azure Standard. They're awesome. They're here to support you in your homesteading journey, in your health journey. We're so thankful to partner with them here at Homesteading Family, and they're so thankful to be here. And they're offering you guys, any of our Homesteading Family members and subscribers, a discount of 15% off of your first order. Just use the coupon code Homesteading Family 15, all upper caps, to get that discount. And once again, thank you, Azure Standard. With a passion for entrepreneurialism, Jason Ross has founded or co-founded over 60 startup companies, including, I hope I get this right, Progrexion, Lexington Law, XTAC, Thirsty Earth, Ready Man, and the one I'm most familiar with, Black Rifle Coffee Company. You probably are too. Jason is also, as I mentioned just a moment ago, the author of numerous nonfiction books, as well as the Black Autumn series of preparedness fiction. And we're going to be centering around that subject today. Now, after Jason's first major business transaction in 2010, he pivoted to exploring how to best help those in the American homeless community, also in Guatemala and Eswatini, Africa. Along the way, he picked up a passion for sustainable farming and permaculture. Jason serves with Fox River Foundation, Guatemala Prospera, and the Rio Grande Foundation. Now, Jason, along with his wife Pamela and their 7 children, reside in the beautiful, bountiful Utah, as well as spending time in Hawaii and Eswatini, Africa. Now, we're going to be talking today about the movie Homestead that's based on his books. It is an ambitious new project that's set to redefine the post-apocalyptic genre across both film and television. Homestead begins with a feature film premiering December 20th, 2024. We're going to tell you how you guys can get some tickets for that. And it's going to be followed by a TV action drama series that expands the storyline in thrilling new ways. Now, as I mentioned, this is based on the best-selling book Black Autumn by Jason Ross and Jeff Kirkham, which has sold over 750,000 copies. The film and TV series can be described as The Last of Us meets SEAL Team. It's set against the backdrop of a collapsing civilization and tells the gripping story of 2 families, the ultra-prepared wealthy family and a military veteran family they've hired for security, who clash in this world that's teetering on the brink of chaos. This is really going to be exciting. I think it's going to speak to a lot of us, and I'm excited to have Jason here to explore some of these ideas today. And here he is. Hey, Jason, how you doing?
Hey, Josh. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for joining us today. We usually do a little chit chat, a little what's going on with you before we get into the core topic here on the Pantry Chat. You're a homesteader like a lot of us out here. You're going through changing seasons. Just What do things look like for you literally on your homestead right now?
Putting everything to bed. You know how it is in November, December. So getting all the 120 fruit trees pruned and tucked away for the winter, and then a million miles of grapevines. Teaching my two little boys how to prune grapes. That's our big
Right.
job right now. We're doing a bunch of shop work too. We have a bunch of little metal fabrication projects going on here on the homestead, keeping the place up. So it's kind of our down season, which ends up being our one of our hardest working seasons.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? We all look to winter, and Carol and I were joking about this morning. As I think, like you, the snow is falling and winter feels like it's setting in here, and talking about winter. And we always think we're going to rest and take it easy. And yet, there is just always a lot to do still.
Yep. Yep. No, there's you get when you have hundreds and hundreds of plants to take care of, there is
Yeah.
always and animals, there's plenty to do.
Yeah. And you guys are doing a lot with perennials, a lot of grapes, a lot of fruit trees, a lot of berries. Is that a huge part of your sustenance?
That's our jam. Yeah, we love. I mean, we have a really wonderful annual garden as well, but that's all completely to sleep now,
Hmm.
all drop and dropped and covered. And then yeah, hundreds of 150 or so orchard trees, and then hundreds and hundreds of berries, Saskatoons, blackberries, raspberries. We're moving into thimbleberries this year. Yeah, we just lots and lots of perennials. That's as permaculturists, that's kind of our favorite way to experiment.
Yeah, well, it's a great way to experiment. It's a great way to build food security, right? You get those perennials in, and while they need some maintenance, they're not as much work as the annual garden year over year. A lot higher production, and they carry on for you.
And we love jam, so jam
Boy,
is dig that.
love some jam. Yeah, you guys, we've really enjoyed freeze drying a lot of our fruit now. Such a great way to enjoy it as well. Do you guys do much of that?
No, we don't. We're I sold my freeze dryer because we just got so into canning,
Yeah.
and just never used it. So and then because we kind of look, we're always learning, sort of post-apocalyptic. Not that we, have any big beliefs about where the world's going to wind up, but because we enjoy the traditional skills so much, we kind of like skew away from electricity and
Yeah.
more toward the old school grandma style jam canning syrups.
There you go. Love it. That's good. It's good, good, good. However, you're getting it put up. Well, hey, you are obviously a serial entrepreneur. I'd love to talk about more about that one day. I didn't realize until checking out this particular bio how much you've done. But you're also a permaculturalist, a homesteader. I think you got some deep skills in survival and tactical training. And all of this comes together somehow into your authorship of this book, Black Autumn. And so I want to kind of pick up the trail there, which eventually leads to the movie, your shirt, Homestead there, and all of that. But um, how did you get to writing this book? Some of the background of your story that led into that, and why?
Had everything to do with Jeff Kirkham. He's 28-year Green Beret. He was just in 2014, just coming out of service along with Evan Hafer. They were just coming out of service from the global war on terror. And Jeff and Evan wanted some help in business startup. I was helping a Navy SEAL at that time, and he connected me with those two guys. They wanted help with Black Rifle Coffee. They wanted to help. They wanted to jump in with Ready Man, that this SEAL guy and I had started. So the Jeff had been writing while he was on deployment as a way to decompress from direct action
Oh,
missions.
okay.
So he was like, "Hey, I was playing around with this, and I read his stuff. It was pretty good." And so he and I started what he called wargaming, a black
Mhm.
swan apocalypse. Like, how would we do that? How would we like work together? What would that be like? And everything he'd seen overseas for the last almost 30 years, he'd seen the collapse in Haiti and Philippines and Iraq, Afghanistan. He'd seen what amounted to a collapse all over the place. And he was like, well, if a collapse happened here, what would be like the holistic survival methodology? And after almost 30 years in the military, Jeff, he was skeptical of the power of the gun to solve all those problems. He was really
Mhm.
deeply skeptical. And he had, he's like in his mid late 40s at the time, starting to see the real power of community. And as a Green Beret, building community is kind of what they do anyway. And
Okay.
he
We
felt,
don't think of them that way. We don't think of that. That's like antithetical almost to what we would think of a green beret doing that. So I didn't really realize that.
and in these sort of like a family driven, particularly Afghanistan, he'd spent over 8 years boots on the ground in Afghanistan, made wonderful friendships, and
Hmm.
became part of their culture. He really grew to respect these really tough, family-oriented people. And there's a whole group of Afghans around the Kirkham family now here in Salt Lake City, and they're all good friends of ours. A lot of them work for Black Rifle Coffee as well. So Jeff and I started like wargaming this idea out, and then we started writing it. And it took us from 2014 to 2018 to complete Black Autumn, which was like that first kickoff. And in a lot of ways, we were telling the story of our friendship. Jeff he came back from working for the State Department as a, not a trusting guy at all, much less trusting like some entrepreneur guy. And it was like the story of our conflicts and how we were wargaming like a civil collapse, but we were actually like describing our relationship as we became brothers and friends.
Oh, very cool. I think it's it's interesting that it sounds like a lot of this story, well, it's obviously theoretical looking forward. It's based on a lot of depth and real world experience and what um, different cultures and peoples have experienced in various forms of collapse. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff had seen like riots in Haiti where there are mobs, and then of course all the schisms in Afghanistan, and then of course a nation completely at war in Iraq. And then he layered our modern culture over top of that, which he and I both felt are that our modern sophisticated technological culture made us more vulnerable to falling off the cliff of civil disorder, as opposed to like Eswatini, where I live some of the year, or Haiti or Afghanistan, that kind of was always there. They weren't relying on modern comforts, culture
Mm.
at all, really, or very little. Guatemala, and for them that cliff is a lot shorter. For us, it's a massive cliff.
Right.
A huge shock. And we told the story of that. You see that story of shock where in the movie, the Homestead movie, where different people are getting it at a different speed. The character Jeff Erickson, who's just very directly written, played by Bailey Chase from Longmire, that is Jeff Kirkham in a nutshell. He gets it right away,
Mhm.
almost to the point of being vastly alarmist and very violent right out of the gate. And everyone else is saying, hold on, government could come right back. Hold on, FEMA might be right around the corner. Hold on, some of the stuff you're doing can get you thrown in jail for the rest of your life. And
Mhm.
Jeff, this character, Jeff Erickson, is saying, it ain't coming back. We're off this cliff. We ain't never coming back. And everyone is kind of getting it at a different pace. And there's still a whole bunch of anti-gun people in the homestead, believe it or not, like
Mhm.
particularly the medical professionals or anti-gun. It just in different modern philosophies. And one of the biggest schisms is God doing something here or not? And
Mm.
people who walk into it with faith want to believe that. People who walk into it as agnostics or technocrats or therapists or whatever have no interest in looking at it that way, and looking at it like what is really going on here on the grand kind of holistic spiritual frame. And they're saying ain't nothing going on, we're dying is what's happening here. And then you got other people saying no, I think maybe God hasn't abandoned us. So there's like all these conflicts as people try to get with the program and figure out what the new program is. And they're they're in huge conflict over it.
Yeah, I mean, you exploring a lot of ideas, real ideas that are going to happen besides just food and guns, right? And survival, the reality of of all the different people in their different places, mentally, spiritually, even physically prepared or not, a
Are
whole
you
lot.
on antidepressants? And
Yeah.
huge percentage of Americans are on antidepressants. When those go away, or some other mind altering substance, if those go away, the next day, what happens to the people you think are okay?
That's an element I hadn't thought of. Yeah, that's a little scary for both those people and the people around them. Mm. You talked about Jeff's. I just want to focus on that, but before we get too far ahead, a couple of the pieces you mentioned with Jeff's experiences and how the gun isn't going to solve the problems. What was that? What did he see? I mean, that's a particular angle from a Green Beret who's obviously out there to train and to use skills to solve problems, and yet he realized in that journey, and you guys are bringing that back around on the story that the guns aren't going to solve all the problems. And I know for me, I live here in North Idaho. We have a lot of people that come up here and move up here to tuck away, and they're building their fortresses. And there's a certain mentality that we're just going to hole up, put up our defenses, and survive whatever happens. And I don't personally think that's a great perspective, but curious what he experienced and what you guys are thinking, how you're thinking that through.
It starts with like Jeff's belief that's completely infected my worldview as well, which is you will never get the apocalypse you ordered. So he'd say the pastor isn't going to get the apocalypse he ordered. He's not
Right.
going to get what he thought Revelations meant. He's not going to get that because it didn't happen the first time when Jesus came. He said the military guy's not going to get the apocalypse he's ordered. He's not going to be able to whip his AR-15 around and like dominate and become some kind of a righteous warlord. The gardener's not going to get the apocalypse he ordered. Ain't nobody going to get the apocalypse they ordered. The one thing you can count on for sure about these collapse scenarios is, particularly black swan collapse scenarios, is you forget being able to predict what's going to happen. Resilience is your friend, and being able to tackle problem sets in a collaborative way with a group of people. So you create this resiliency in a community. And Jeff is a historian, so he looks back through the history of man and
Mm-hmm.
says it's like Native American cultures, these European cultures, Viking cultures. They'd create communities that could absorb unanticipated situations. It's very Western of us to think we can predict that, oh, it's going to be like 1 minute after. Oh, it's going to be like, the day after, like we saw when we were kids. It's going to be like this. Jeff's response is, forget it. We've never been able to predict much. We can't even predict what the next war is going to look like.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of minds on that. And we wade into those, and we're always shocked at how this war is so different from the last. And we're caught flat footed, and it takes us half a decade to catch up. And he was in the middle of the global war on terror as we began to figure out guerrilla war when we thought it was going to be big war, like Red Storm Rising, big war against Russia. And it winds up being this war with these little crappy cells of very effective fighters. And so Jeff had learned a great deal of humility about survival
Hmm.
in 28 years fighting, never seeing what he thought it would be, never seeing what he was trained it would be, having to revise constantly. And so he applied that to like, yeah, here's one thing I can pretty much guarantee: it would not be like we thought.
Yeah. I think it's actually one failure of our Western um, just thought way of approaching things that's based just purely on logic and then on science when we misapply, and then even statistics, right? When we believe we can put all those things together and really predict and know what's going to happen and take a lot of confidence in that. And the world's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, people ask me, how do you think the world will end? First of all, I think it won't likely end like in the way
Right.
you think of it. And second of all, I don't care. I want to live resilient, and I want to live in community. And it's something we've learned as homesteaders, particularly since COVID is, or those of us who were doing it prior to COVID, is I don't need an apocalypse to go live like this with my family and in community. I can just do that now. And then I'm maximally resilient and skilled in dealing with, the
Mhm.
chaos of homestead farming, the chaos of communities that don't always get along. Let's just do that now and wade through that now and reduce the shock. It's a better way to live. Why not just live that way?
Yeah, you pulled it out of my head. That it's just a better way to live. I'm reading a book from 1939 right now, "Rural Roads to Security." It's America's third fight for freedom. It says, and it is exploring just this as industrialization is taking hold and people are moving from land-based, family-centric economy to this mechanized factory, economy. And even then, they were realizing it was not a good way to live. It wasn't a good way for culture. It wasn't good for families or good for individuals. And so I think while we all have our scenarios and our concerns about where the world is going and the possibility of different scenarios, black swan events that I think are all plausible, we can't just sit and live in fear of those things and worry about them. And so I love you bringing out just the practicalness and the resilience and the need to be resilient. If we just all were focusing on being resilient as individuals, as families, that would build I think, a resilient culture as opposed to self sufficiency, which is kind of the buzzword, right? A lot in homesteading. I'd love to see that change to resilience. Let's make that our buzzword and focus on that.
And we like as we've written the screenplay and of course the novels, we have like two buzzwords we go back to, or buzz lines, taglines we go back to. I'm not even sure which ones we end up using with the film. One is the end of the world is just the beginning. And
Hmm.
so we're using the end of the world as a way to show the way through
Yeah.
now without any end of the world, hopefully. And the other one we keep going back to is prepare to share. Because preparing to just take care of my own, that's not a very resilient way of living. If I prepare to share with as many people as possible, as many people as I feel called to, um, that is true resiliency. So don't just prepare, like just right down to the wire. What does my family need? Rather, prepare to grow, prepare to organically expand um, our creation, and therein lies, permaculture, rich soil, regenerative agriculture, perennials, foods that produce way more food, or plants that can produce way more food than you can actually consume when it's right, like grapes, like
Mhm.
apples, like cherries, like and look at how to plant what could be a blessing going forward for a community.
Yeah, I mean, core permaculture ethics, right? Which should be core human ethics, but surplus and being able to utilize that surplus to share with other people. And I love the prepare to share. I'm gonna borrow that if that's all right. That's just a great way to sum that up. And I've seen a rough cut of the movie, and it was my favorite thing about the movie was just exploring that and the duality of the gun and protection versus taking care of people and the needs out there and preparing to share. And I walked away thinking about our own homestead so much about that. Like it's in our mind, but it really made me look at them. Are we practically doing that? Are we taking action that helps more than just us as we look at our own projects on the homestead, what we build out. So love that concept. I want to come back though for a minute, just to some of the practical. So you guys wrote this book exploring these concepts. That best-selling book turned into a series, right? There's a number of books out there that followed that up.
Yep, it's 10 novel series, Black Autumn. And then we've also published Homestead Black Autumn, which is a faith and family edition of the original novel, Black
Okay.
Autumn. It's called Homestead.
Hmm.
So it incorporates both Black Autumn. It's a military thriller, right? So as much as we talk about permaculture, tons and tons and tons of tactical gunplay, both in the movie, the television show, and the novels. It is a military thriller. It's we're looking at it that way, though it kind of blows up all the tropes of post-apocalyptic or even military, but it is that is a huge part of our preparedness. So we have the novel, we have Homestead Faith and Family edition that integrates Black Autumn better with the novel and the movie. tells the actual story of the movie. It's something that's adapted well for children or people of faith who have trouble with the swearing. There's no swearing in the Faith and Family edition.
So that's the better family edition. It sounds like is the Homestead Black Autumn.
Yeah, so they're all available on Amazon, and
Yeah.
then it pours straight over into the rest of the series, which of course does have swearing. These are special forces soldiers who are
Yeah.
many of the characters.
Sure. Yeah. No, I love it that you guys created a version that's family friendly. You're accomplishing so much in the storyline and thinking things through. So I think that's great. You guys did that so that younger people can read it. Um, so you got this book. We don't get to talk a whole lot about what does it look like to go from writing the book to creating the movie. Like, how did that come about? Can you give us a little insight on how did you get from a book to a movie? I mean, I know that happens a lot where there's great books and so they become a movie, but most of us don't. What does that conversation look like for you guys? How did that come about to think about doing a movie and then with Angel Studios?
Yeah, the novel series did really, really well. We were super happy with it, Jeff and I. And we were approached a couple of times by different Hollywood insiders, and nothing about that process interested us. We looked at it. We Black Rifle Coffee created their own movie. It was a nightmare. I mean, they did really well, but it was just a horrible process of
Okay.
working with Hollywood at all.
Mhm.
And so we were in no big hurry to turn it into a movie. One day we did a fathers and son event at the homestead. So it was dads and their boys coming to learn a bunch of stuff. It was all kind of homestead learning, dads and sons hunting turkeys and
Mhm.
taking helicopter rides and learning tactical stuff from a Navy SEAL. And I was around the fire with Jordan Harmon, who's the president of Angel
Mhm.
Studios, and he said, "Hey, you guys, Black Autumn's amazing. Have you ever thought of turning it into a movie or a TV show?" And that's when we looked at the Angel Studios model of or supporting creating films and TV shows that create light, that bring light to the world now, and also their financial model, where they have their own streaming service, about 35 million app downloads. uh,
Mhm.
we were right in the middle of them, where they were square in the middle of The Chosen at the time, and Sound of Freedom was coming up. We were happy, thrilled to be part of that family, and that is what really like fired a belief in Angel Studios and what they were doing really looked right to us. And to this day, we're just so thrilled to be in partnership with Angel.
Yeah, I love what they're doing and just bringing light to the world through media. We've needed that for so long, just to bridge the good stories with high quality production, right? And storylines that's still engaging and enjoyable.
Yeah, so they really inspired us to do it. We loved it on all levels.
Yeah.
So continues to be a really phenomenal brotherhood.
So what does that look like for you then? Because you're not acting, you're not an actor in the movie, but it's based on the story that you wrote with Jeff. So how do you even put that together and choose what goes in, what goes out, how to like I know for you, just the little bit I've gotten to know you, maintaining the integrity of the story is going to be important, right? Sometimes Hollywood gets hold of a movie and it's just totally different than the book and the integrity of the book. So I know that's going to be important. What does that journey look like and how are you involved, I guess? And
I'm the lead writer, so I've had to learn how to screenwrite, which has been a heck of a journey. Luckily, Sam Sheridan jumped on as an EP, and he's mentored me, and he's created his own television shows. His wife is a director of the Wonder Woman movies. Sam's written a lot of stuff, so he mentored me as a writer. Continues to mentor me. It was who I was talking to on the phone right before we started here. So we were blessed with really, really great Hollywood help. He was a writer on SEAL Team Jack Ryan, EP on Jack Ryan, executive producer on Jack Ryan. So this is Sam has been super giving of his mentorship. So we've been able to kind of capture the best of what Hollywood's figured out in terms of storytelling, with Sam's help. But I actually didn't want personally didn't want to maintain, quote, the integrity of the Black Autumn story because there was
Okay.
just a lot I thought was missing. I couldn't tell a story. I wanted a story where God was more in the middle because God would definitely be more in the middle. I've
Mhm.
had two sons in the military, and they went from being relatively agnostic to being 100% believers and followers of God because they're in the military and they were suffering and they
Mm.
needed a relationship. And Jeff Kirkham is like, hey man, anyone who says they're like an agnostic, whatever, you get into combat, you will go there. There's no atheist in the foxhole, Jeff would say, which
Yeah.
I've said many times. So I was. It took us 10 novels to get to the point where the role of God in this conflagration began to like percolate. Whereas I was like, I'm not gonna wait for 10 seasons before we start asking questions about what the heck is God doing here
Mm.
in this
Wow.
mess. And we have no way of knowing because it doesn't track with Revelations at all what we're seeing.
Mhm.
Uh, there's no rapture. There's no like. It's just anyone's guess. And what is like these Christians who go into this moment of apocalypse and they have 100 people pounding on their gate, starving,
Yeah.
who are friends of theirs, as you
Yeah.
know in the movie. What
Yeah.
do Christians do in that moment? Do they, is it kill or be killed, or is there anything else going on there? What about loaves and fishes? What about, there's some role for that or no role for that, or it's just we wanted to tackle all of those questions and say, okay, all right, so here you are, you're a red state Christian, you've been prepared. Now what do you do when people are pounding at your gate? How do you know the answer to that question? Because honestly, I don't know the answer to that question, and we wanted to tease on that. So I never got to do that in Black Autumn because it was a military thriller purely.
Mhm.
I wanted to, and Jeff wanted to expand into this world, some bigger questions about, okay, so how do you know what's right? How do you know if you should shoot at those police officers? How do you know they're police officers? The
Yeah.
world supposedly ended 18 days ago, and you're going to be like going hot against police officers? Like,
Mhm.
maybe. I mean, how would you know?
Yeah. No, they're real questions that it's again, it's easy to just think we're going to put up our stores and take care of ourselves and protect the perimeter and maybe even share with people. That's kind of easy to just think that out in simplicity, but when you get into the reality and the variety of the situations like what you guys are exploring in the movie, there's a lot more depth to flesh out, to think about. And I appreciate your canon. It's like, do any of us really know what we would do? Because one, like you said, you don't get the apocalypse you ordered. You're not going to get the situation necessarily that you're expecting. And there's so much there. And so that's exciting. I didn't, that's just exciting. The depth that you guys are adding to the storyline and exploring these things for people. And I think that's what's, besides just the good quality of film, that's what's so important about this is how many questions you guys ask in the movie and get us thinking about.
Yeah, and back to your question about Black Autumn. So Black Autumn is one novel. It's roughly 12 hours of narrated if you listen to Audible.
Mhm.
That's an entire season of the show. So the movie is just the first, we call it kind of 2 episodes. That's how we think of it, that the movie is the first 2 episodes. It's
Mhm.
a long pilot that kicks you into the television show. So the television show, call it 10 episodes if you call the movie two, does tell the whole story of Black Autumn. So that is one season. So in terms of timing, it seems a little cramped because we like pulled out some storylines,
Yeah.
and so yeah, we wanted to start with a bang with
Yep.
a movie that kind of threw all the moral questions into the mix, and
Yeah.
now we've got 10 episodes to tell that whole novel story.
And so the movie in the 10 episodes you're saying is basically represents Black Autumn, the first book. So there's actually a big story here to unfold over time, um, which there's a lot to explore, and you guys do a great job kicking it off. So we've touched a lot on different elements of the movie. So I think people listening here have got they got a pretty good idea of different things that are going on in the movie. But can you give us a storyline from the trailer view or from your view, just the basic storyline linear? You're obviously not giving the movie away, but what's just the premise in kind of this just straightforward linear fashion?
Okay, so Black Autumn collapsed, and the information about it is so thin, because it begins with a nuclear event. It's essentially just a suitcase bomb that rolls into Los Angeles harbor on a sailboat.
Hmm.
A couple of Sulu archipelago Filipinos who were kind of set in this direction by their imam. Who knows why, where it came from? You find all that out in the novel series. And that one little nuke sends, it doesn't really kill many people, but it sends LA and that whole Southern California region into total panic. And then there's information coming through that the Russians pile on with a cyber attack that shuts down all the power stations in the US, which of course they've done before, and they've done it in Ukraine. So there's pile on from different enemy state actors to just make sure US on the ropes goes down. And that's about all we know. What's happening in the outside world, all that information sort of goes away when the power goes out. And all we hear is fragmentary things on shortwave. So a rich man has this monster homestead, several hundred acres. He's planned for the big one. We don't really know yet how or why he knows that was coming, why he did that in the first place. We pick up reasons along the way, but he has made a deal with Jeff Erickson, a veteran, Green Beret with tons of special operation forces soldier buddies. He's made a deal with him to come in and provide security. But of course, money is worth butt kiss. So with money worth nothing, and with Jeff Erickson being a man of his own mind, he shows up and immediately begins to second guess and doubt and question. And they're not friends. This was an employer-employee relationship between this really headstrong, knowledgeable, very, very experienced Green Beret and this wealthy man who's an analytical, sort of control dude as well. And they're immediately clashing. Who is going to be in charge? And why would Jeff do anything that the rich man says? Why would he just not take control? There's a lot of good reasons, and those are all being explored. And their conflict is pretty hot right out of the gate. And how are the wives going to interface? Who do they let in? There's already a small community of maybe 100 people in the homestead, but there's 100 people outside the gate almost immediately. What the heck do they do with the refugees that are piling up? What are they doing with like the local constabulary? And what about the local town? And as the local town starts to look toward them as, let's socialize everything they have, their guns, ammo, beans, bullets, band-aids. Let's go take it. What happens then? What happens is all these pressures begin to mount. And at the same time, they're inside the homestead, everybody's going, either doesn't believe it's really happening, doesn't want to believe it's really happening. They're looking to God, they're looking to nobody, they're just falling into depression. The world outside is crumbling, and we get to see that happen. It's becoming very violent very quickly with no power.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately, what is the right answer? And it all boils down to generous, wealthy wife of the wealthy man, where she looks her husband in the eye and says, is this an ark or is this a fortress? And that is the primary question that they must answer.
Yeah. Yep. And that's a good hook to leave it right there as far as the storyline goes. And you guys got to go check this movie out. It's very, very thoughtful. It's very, very well done. And I think you see here talking to Jason, it's just very relevant to the things we're thinking about, and whether we think there's an apocalypse coming, whatever that. Look, we know our culture is unstable. We know things are happening. They're not going to keep going as normal or as planned. I think that's just reality, and why a lot of us are here doing the things we're doing and having these conversations. And I love it that you guys, Jason and Jeff and Angel, are picking this up and exploring the story in this way. So we got the movie coming out, right, December 20th. And then though it's going to pick up, right? So the movie's just the beginning. It's not like boom, go to the box office and see the movie, but like you mentioned, then that's going to continue on with a series over the next year. Do you know, or
you can go right from the movie. The movie comes out Christmas week, so 20th, You
Yeah.
can go straight from the movie home, jump on Angel's streaming app, and watch the next 2 episodes. I
Oh,
just
it'll
saw
be out.
the next episode. It's fantastic, and we'll have 2 episodes that we just finished filming. We'll have 2 episodes ready on Angel streaming, so it pours straight over into the next 2 episodes, and then we'll finish filming or mid next year. The plan is to finish filming the remaining 6 episodes to wrap up sort of a Black Autumn season, and
Mm-hmm.
then with any luck, we'll move straight into the second season called White Wasteland, which of course takes place in winter.
Okay. Yeah, looking forward to all of this. I want to recap one other piece though here, and then we're gonna let people know about some of the stuff that you guys are all doing. I think Angel Studios, whoever's leading the way in promoting this, got some fun giveaways coming up. We'll talk about that in a second. But one of the notes I saw on the show is it's a post-apocalyptic series of hope, and you mentioned a couple times about just breaking kind of the trope or the paradigm of the standard apocalyptic movie. Give us a little bit into that if you would, because that was the other piece that I loved about this movie. I mean, I enjoy apocalyptic movies. I enjoy running the scenarios and thinking about what could be, and but this is full of hope. So tell us about what you guys are doing in that side of things.
Well, it's kind of preaching to the choir, to the school of additional skills. I mean, we know, those of us who homestead and raise children homesteading, we know that this lifestyle, like dialing back the clock significantly in what we spend our days doing and how we raise our kids and even how we school our children,
Mm-hmm.
that there's so much hope. Like it's not a catastrophe to lose social media. I mean, here we are, social media. But it's no, what's the big catastrophe here of losing all the modern conveniences? The big catastrophe, I mean, I think none of us want to go back to polio, but uh, when we look at dialing back the way we live to something simpler and something where we co-work and rely on one another more, and we take the time to work the soil, work with our hands, work with each other with our hands in the soil, raise our children. Like we know, wow, the end of the world. There's a version of the end of the world that might just be the beginning. Like we know that, those of us who raise chickens and grow food, and we're like, oh, there's something sacred and peaceful and highly rewarding about that. So in the middle of a massively thrilling, peril-riven story, we're also seeing like the kids press wine and the kids take care of the goats and the moms and dads and the therapists is sorting acorns, and they're having these moments of we're watching 2 young people go back to courting, like whoever does that anymore, like actually dating each other as they fall in love in the middle of the apocalypse. And so yeah, we look at this as like, hey, those of us who live homesteading lifestyles, we live like it's not all bad news. In fact, there's a lot of good news. In fact, there's probably more good news than bad news when it comes to living together like this.
I love that. I love it. I love your story. I love Angel getting behind this and you guys just making this not just an exciting, interesting story of what if on the apocalyptic side, but um, the the potential for resiliency and human growth and hope within humanity through whatever trials and tribulations we might face. That there truly is hope. So that's exciting. I really wanted our audience to know that today, as we leave here. You guys think about this movie that it is. It's not just exploring what might go wrong. It's exploring a whole lot of depth about how we respond to those things, but hope in the midst of that. And I'm sure that the series goes on to expound on that hope and that human experience. Um, so before we wrap up here, we've got you can buy your tickets now. So we want people to know that. We're going to drop a link in here for you in the show notes, whether you're listening on the podcast or YouTube or on our website, wherever you're at here. Just check out the show notes. There's going to be a link for you to buy tickets. Want to encourage you to get those tickets. There's a big move out here to get this filled up and get people to the box office. And so get your tickets early. But by getting them early, there's some really, really cool giveaways. Jason, I think you know a lot more of the details than I do. So what is going on? There's some cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, while Jeff and I were writing the novels, and then as we moved on to writing the screenplay, we're of course using all the tools that we use homesteading or
Yeah.
preparing, using solar power, using e-bikes, using greenhouses, using irrigation systems for our garden. All the stuff that all the products that we've fallen in love with in actual homesteading. And we're kind of techno homesteaders. We're gadget freaks, over here. So everything we loved, fallen in love with, we went to those companies and asked them to be story partners in the movie and the television show. So you'll see actual homesteading using these actual tools
Mhm.
in the movie, TV show, and in the live and scripted show that's also right now available called Homestead Family Survival on
Yeah.
Angel. So
Yeah.
it's
I've seen.
actually a little family of shows. The live and scripted show you can watch right now.
Yeah.
So we went back to those products and said, "Hey guys, let's do a monster give. Let's give away a whole homestead with a tiny home and a greenhouse and e-bikes and first aid kits and food storage from Thrive Food. So all solar power, Jenny's from Lion Energy, all of our favorite stuff, and they all showed up and they all came in, and even Diesel Brothers, Sparks Motors came in and is tuning up a Polaris ATV for the giveaway. So it's a $300,000 giveaway. It includes a Bitcoin, a tiny home, greenhouse. It's like we call it an instant homestead. Just plop it on your land and go. And so that's right now. If you buy tickets early, you get entered to win the instant homestead. If you look at the prize list, like anyone would want that stuff. It's awesome. It's all the
Yeah.
best stuff in preparedness homesteading.
Yeah. Very cool. This is fun. Looking forward to it here in just a couple of weeks. And so I want to encourage you all to go out, get your tickets. We'll drop in some trailer links. We'll drop in a link about that giveaway. There's a whole video on that. It tells you all about it as well as where to get your tickets and everything. And Jason, I'm so glad it's you that's telling this story. There's a when you look at Hollywood and you look at where they could have gone, being that setting is becoming more, it's a larger conversation within our culture. It's growing, obviously. There's TV shows on it. There's, those of us that are teaching or YouTubing or whatever. It's obviously the discussion's growing in our culture. And so it's a matter of time before somebody picked this up in a big box way as far as the movie theater. And I'm glad it's your story. I'm glad it's Angel and what you guys are doing. I think you're doing a lot of honor to the people that are living this and that are making life changes to embrace this lifestyle. And you guys are doing a great thing in the concepts that you're exploring and the story that you're telling and the way it's getting brought to the public. So looking forward to that. I don't go to the theater much anymore, but we're going to be there for this one for
All
sure.
right.
So I hope all of our listeners will get out there and hey, I think you and I will get to meet here in maybe a few days at the premiere. So looking forward to that as well.
Excellent. Can't wait.
Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate you. And everybody else, thanks for hanging out. And we will see you soon.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Pantry Chat, Food for Thought. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review.
To view the show notes and any other resources mentioned on this episode, you can learn more at homesteadingfamily.com/podcast.
We'll see you soon.
Goodbye.